All right, let me do the countdown. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is a joyful Wednesday. Daylight saving times is here. You know, longer days, but early mornings, and we are at the midweek, and we are at hump day. Hope everybody is doing good as people start to come in. Sonny, I don't know how you're doing. I'm looking for the thing to add so I can share it out on the page. Did it come up for you?
What's it?
The link for the Facebook Live.
I don't know. I wasn't paying no attention. You're talking about on our page?
Yeah, on our page, just so we can start.
Yeah, we live.
You see it on the page?
Yeah. Wait a minute. I just saw it.
Okay, I'll wait on the notification. Let me put this through. So, got a lot to talk about. We are talking about funding formulas that will dictate how we operate maybe the next 10, maybe the next 30 years. You know, we want to talk about librarians. We want to talk about reading and how things are going. You know, it's a lot of things happening in public education that, you know, first and foremost, we just want to make sure people can read, but we do want to make sure parents are hearing this and understanding this and creating dialogue. And then we want to see what else is going on individually with your schools, other things that we may not be aware of. But before we jump into that, Sonia, how's everything been going for you?
Everything has been going well. It's spring break, but it's not spring break. So my son's got baseball practice all over town. So yesterday I was at Hillwood. The day before that, I was at McGavick. And then today they got rained out, but I still ended up having to take him to the batting thing right in the middle of a work day.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. John got soccer practice tonight. Like you said, just ain't the same. Spring break, you know, the best thing he's done is sleep in. But other than that, it's been, you know, another day in the neighborhood.
But I was hoping I would get to sleep in, John.
I know. We're keeping them active, though. We're keeping them active. They won't forget. And before I jump into it, you know, one of the things that I just wanted to discuss, it was one of the families that I've been knowing ever since I think I was right out of college, but doing a spring break trip, one of our families at the school, it was a mother-daughter trip, and they got into a bad car accident, and one of John's classmates didn't make it. And so I want to send my condolences to the Mosley family. It's nothing you want to wake up to or hear. And then even with John, I had to realize that it was affecting him. It was all over their social media, and that's how he found out. And so Mr. Mosley, Miss Mosley, you guys are definitely in our prayers. And I'd definitely be supporting the GoFundMe. I think I saw a couple of them.
My daughter came to my bedroom talking about this.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that it was a classical family, but my daughter is friends with the young lady's brother.
Okay.
And she's been very upset about it. And so I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's just something you never want to wake up to. And then we just start to realize, like, if it affects us, kids around this age, as they start to experience tragedy, it affects them. And my son, he was going real slow and lagging, and I got on to him. And then I had to take a step back and say, why is he lagging? Why is he going slow? Why is he so aloof? And so we just had a conversation about it to make sure, like, mentally he feels like he can talk about it, and we can process and maybe even getting some support, especially as we get ready for our speaker series, you know, on the 28th. That's one of the things that we're going to be talking about, parents. We have heard you loud and clear when we think about mental health. And we got Dr. Lawson, who's just been a friend of Propel since we started even going through the pandemic. She came on there to talk about mental health. And so she'll be back. and we'll start to really have a deeper conversation around with professionals, because I can talk about it, but I ain't no professional. So I am looking forward, because I'm gonna be utilizing her professional advice as well.
Yeah, it's important that we in our community that we have these conversations. Just looking at children like they grieve.
Yes.
That and we don't think about that people grieve in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may not have tears coming down their face, but like you said, John, it may slow down and not respond in certain ways. So we thought it was important to address mental health in our community. And so I'm looking forward to Dr. Moore.
Yes. And so one of the things, I want to jump into, we talked about some of the things that we want to talk about. We want to talk about, the funding formula. We want to talk about, the headlines when we think about when people say CRT or mask or penalizing librarians. I think one of the things that we have all gone back to, what is our bread and butter? And, in our community at times, we haven't reached that level to think about what are divisive topics, because we're just trying to say, can kids read? And that's what we want to focus on, making sure, based on what the numbers say each year, can our kids read? And shout out to our parents. Last night we had our monthly campaign call with our fellowship alum, and parents had a lot to say. They had a lot of opinions on funding formula, how things are working. And I remember one parent was like, on the test, making sure kids are not over tested. And I think the response is, well, what we see in our community, we know something is not right. Whether they test well or not, we know by the time they make it out, we are missing some key things. And that's why we're here, to make sure our kids get better than what we've been getting, and get enough to make sure they can not just survive, but thrive in today's America.
Yeah, I think we have so many issues.
So many issues. I see Keith Bates jumping on. We grew up in the neighborhood, and he is thriving. I think I forgot where he's at, but he's at a new restaurant. So shout out to Keith. But education is important, and it didn't reach all of us.
No, it didn't. And just listening to the parents, I always reflect off of conversations that we have with parents. And I know sometimes they wonder, well, how do you know what to fight for? That's what I heard last night. How do you, with all the stuff that's going on, which fight do you get into, right? Y'all know there's some knuck if you buck.
Come on now. That's the song. You just come in, you start with Johnson.
That's like the Black anthem for the 90s kids, right? And you try to think about what is our fight? That's what I heard parents say. This is happening. Well, I can tell you, our fight is the parent fight. We fight on behalf of parents. We, teachers got people fighting for them, and principals got people fighting for them, and hasn't been anybody to fight for parents. And so that's what we do. And that's the conclusion the answer I came up with last night was, we fight for parent issues. And issues with our children. So there's just so many things that are going on, and we have to choose the thing that's systemically devastating our community.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, and I think it goes across the line, right? A lot of times, we still deal with race. I always said, if I don't have nothing nice to say, but the things that are going on in Ukraine are horrendous. But the undertone of some of the things that I hear and see, it's even worse for people of color. And that's whole nother topic to get into. But as we think about education now, I was talking to a mom yesterday. I don't know if it was Jolton or Bordeaux, but she wasn't a Black mom. She was a white mom. And she talked about how they would bring her into these IEP meetings, right? And I said, hold on, let me tell you how it goes. I was like, they bring you in and it's just you and it's 7. She was like, yeah. I was like, they start off the meeting by telling you how much they enjoy your kids. She was like, yeah. I was like, they end with you not fully understanding, but since you got so many voices coming at you, you just be. She was like, yeah, and I was like, that's how they do everybody.
And she was everybody. And you know I'm a trends person, so I started to notice that every time I come in here, it's 6, 7, 5, 6, 7 y'all one of me.
And by the time it ends, we really ain't talked about it. Now we walk out smiling because they give us hugs. They say how good our child is really doing, but it don't add up, right? It don't add up to see why we even having this meeting, because it hasn't been going well.
Or you leave shamed.
Yeah.
You leave feeling like you inadequate. You didn't do something. And one of the ways I thought that was like, I can remember one time they said, CJ is sleepy. I said, okay, I'll handle that. That's on me. But let's talk about A, B, C, D. So I'll handle that. He will not come back here sleeping in class. I guarantee you that.
Right.
Like, so it's just, sometimes it's a diversion away from what the root cause really is. Yep. It is like, like kids get sleepy because they ain't going to bed. That's a mama thing. I'm going to take care of that. Like, everybody's got their thing that they need to be held accountable. So, hey, thank you for telling me that. I'm going to make sure. But why haven't you told me before this meeting that I asked for that he was sleeping? Yep. Like, let's get down to that, because had you told me early on, this would not be the focus of this meeting.
We'll be able to get into the real issues.
But thank you for telling me now, because I'm going to handle that.
So one of the things that we want to discuss, as we talked about last night, when we think about this funding formula, the headlines have been more money is coming in to public education. Like, just be ready because it's coming. But as we broke it down with our parents last night, we realized that potentially it's coming, but also there's some things that you got to know that may not be in the headline, that may be in the details. They always say the devil is in the details. And as you see this, and we'll read it, Sonya, but just what's your take on the new funding formula? And then we can go through and kind of hear from what the media is saying and what the governor's office and legislatures and all the people that are debating this right
now. So I think we've been very clear. Like this, the way that it's being presented, it seems like a slap in the face of our children. I think it's important that we as parents, we as community members, take a deeper dive and ask questions that are meaningful questions. We need to ask why a lot of things. Why is it this and why is it that? Why is it that a school district that is, a little bit larger than ours, we're like the second largest district in the state of Tennessee, is getting a plethora, a tremendous, a greater amount of money than we are, and we are getting about the same amount of money as smaller districts. And we have to make sure that there's no politics involved, and we got to make sure that there's true equity. And what we're seeing is that there may be less of the equity than we expected.
Yeah. So I would say, I got the article that I definitely want to go through, but one of the other things that I also want to do is play that 2-minute video. But let me pull up actually, what are we saying? What are we talking about as we come to the funding formula? And so I'm going to share this now. And so right now, the conversation is, so in the last 30 years, we have had the BEP, which is the Basic Education Plan, right? And the headline today reads, lawmakers question whether Bill Lee's new education formula proposal is moving too fast. And so some of the people are chiming in, Republicans and Democrats question the rush in trying to pass Governor Lee's new education funding formula as the legislation underwent its first round of review in a House Education Subcommittee. The concerns echo similar ones made when the bill was introduced last month, And this is Representative Sapicki. He said, I would just hope we're in the mindset of let's get it right for Tennessee. Democrats said if we get this wrong, we might not come back around to this for another 20 to 30 years. I want to make sure we get this right instead of sprinting to the finish line. And one of the things that we talked about in our class, like trying to understand how did parents understand what the funding formula was, the new one, and then we realized really quickly that we even had to do a deeper dive and really talk through the basics of like what does it really mean.
Yeah, and many other parents had different things that they wanted to see, like in the classroom. Like someone said they wanted to see more teachers' aides. So helping parents to understand that this formula is supposed to do just that. Like it's supposed to directly fund students and not the system, right? And so right now we have a formula that funds the system and doesn't look at whether or not you have a special needs child that needs more help with their activities of daily living, those types of things, right?
Yep, those accommodations.
Yeah, need those that's more than an accommodation, right? Like that's some of these kids need help with their activities of daily living, and that may be diaper changes or feeding tubes, or medicine. And in this formula, that's why the fight has been to fund the student, because that student has more of a need for certain things, right? So helping our parents to understand that's what we're fighting for. But sometimes kind of getting into the nitty gritty of things with such a huge thing, right? Like it's really hard. So last night I thought it was a good opportunity for us to connect with parents to help them to understand that it was important that they tell those stories, so that so that legislators, so that people who are making these decisions understand what's going on at the classroom level, but also what they care the most about. You're on mute, John.
Yeah, I think that's always important, like understanding what do parents care about. Like when we talked about like the choices that parents have. And it was like, but what do you care about? It's not about the school. It's about where do you want to see your kid? Like, what are some of the things they like? Like, I didn't want to go to NSA, National School of Art, because I wasn't artsy. Like, it was a choice, but it was a different school that I didn't want to use my choice to do that. And so when we think about things that are coming up, as we think about the next 20 to 30 years, and we think about the funding formula and how do we make sure like it's not business as usual, right? Like we want to make sure like if we are showing up from pre-K, some kids start schooling by 3 years old and they don't finish till they're 16, 17, or even 18. And so it's a lot of years to be in school. And a lot of times, which we're seeing like the outcomes are not where it needs to be. And kids end up leaving school and not ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this formula should make sure that the things that need to happen to ensure that if they need more ACT prep, if they need more tutoring, like this formula, what we're saying is that formula needs to needs to be a formula to ensure outcomes. That the outcome is they're able to go to college. The outcome is that if they choose to go vocational. I went vocational. But really it wasn't really a choice. I didn't have a choice but to go vocational because I didn't have the ACT score. Okay. I did not have the GPA, but I would have liked to have gone to the nursing program at Tennessee State University.
Right.
But because I was inadequately educated, then I had to take a longer road to get to my dream and my vision for myself.
Let me pull this up, Sonia. Let's do the video. It's a 2-minute video. I think it'll be helpful, and we'll share it out also on the comments so parents can use it as a resource if need be.
Okay.
is one of the most important things we do, but an equally important issue is how to do it. How can we meet the funding needs of each individual student? With input from Tennesseans across the state, the Department of Education is exploring a new vision for public school funding, a strategy known as student-based funding. Here's how it works. First, we consider the amount of funding that each student needs for their K-12 education. This includes factors like teachers, school facilities, materials, and transportation. That's our base. Next, we consider individual students' additional needs. This might be services for students with disabilities or unique learning needs, advanced programming for gifted students, or added support for students in rural or low-income areas. These considerations are known as weights. Then we factor in money allocated for specific student opportunities. That might include summer classes, ACT testing for high schoolers, or career and technical education. This is direct funding. Finally, we incorporate funding for districts that empower students to achieve their full potential. More low-income students passing AP exams, for example, or more students with learning differences getting college-ready scores on the ACT, and more students across Tennessee improving their reading proficiency. This is outcomes funding. The result? A funding approach that recognizes and meets the needs of each individual student. Input from across the state has shown us that if Tennesseans can agree on anything, it's this: every child has potential, and every child deserves funding that allows them to thrive. Learn more about how student-based funding can empower every Tennessee child to succeed.
Yeah. So we received that video from the Department of Education. So it's not, we don't want to take credit for that video, but
Right.
they send it to us. And it was a good tee up.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be releasing some more information that they send us, but first we want to review it.
Mm-hmm.
But and not to say that they would send us anything crazy, but we do like to review things. But we're going to put out some more information on this. To make sure that you as parents, you as community leaders, know you're in the know. Like, I love it when people fight. Like, even when I don't agree
Right.
with other people's fight, I love the fact that they fight. I love the fact that they have some fight in them. But we want to make sure that we can all be on one accord as much as possible with this, because it has some long-term effects.
It does.
It does. And we gotta get this right. And if we don't get it right, like for me, John, as I'm thinking about it, how do we evaluate in a timely manner whether or not we're getting it right? I think we said this at the town hall, like we want it to be outcome based. But then in 3 to 5 years, let's evaluate if the strategy is really working. Let's not wait 10 or 15 years to say, you know what, that damn formula wasn't no good. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, people.
Come on now. Come on now.
Like, is it working? What's working? What's not working?
And how do we tell? You know, the crazy thing. People will never make a change. Like, well, let me say this. People in leadership will never make a change until they're pushed to do it, right? So when we think about everything that's going on, like, we didn't have MLK in Hume Fog until we realized that we had a mass exodus of parents doing desegregation. So what did they do? They say, shoot, we can't keep surviving with this exodus. Let's bring them back in. Like, we also look at, Nashville. I read an article in the paper this morning. It ain't connected. Well, it is connected to education. They said everybody who's moving to the city, to Nashville, is looking at the community, but they're also looking at the schools, right? So that stood out. They were like, before they move into the neighborhood, they want to make sure the school is good. But what I also heard Son, it's people spending $500,000 and they never even seen the house. It's just that much of a market. And so we just think, if they're also thinking about education, what does that really mean for the community? Like, what does that mean when a person has a demand like, I refuse to send my child here until the school is doing better? Like, I'm not going to that school. Like Buena Vista, it has just as many people living there as it did 20 years ago, right? They got the Wortham Lofts, they got these apartments, they got new homes. But one of the things that are not happening, the people who are coming in definitely are not sending their kids, or were not sending their kids to Buena Vista, and they're not sending their kids to Jones Padea. But why? Like, why are they not sending their kids there?
You know, the people that want to save public education,
Okay.
I always ask that question. Why are you not looking at the root cause as to why people don't want to send their kids to the school? Like, you can fight all day and talk about the competition.
Yep.
Like, it's like, you know, we don't like these type of schools.
Yep.
They try to privatize education. And I'm looking at them going, well, why are they?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you never want to talk about, well, only 5% of the kids or less know how to read in that school. So why don't we do something about that? Because if you teach your kids how to read in that school, I want my kid over there. I don't care if it's down the street. I don't care if it's across town. I don't care where it is. If it's at your house on your back porch and you teach your kids how to read, I want my kid there. And I just think it's just weak.
Yeah. It's really, I always tell people that's not my fight, right? My fight is not in what school are parents sending their kids to, right? When I think about Ida B. Wells, right? When I stayed on Meridian in the projects, it was right next to Ida B. Wells, right? And when I went to middle school, I went to Lytton. So I had to walk past, it was called Caldwell at the time. It wasn't doing well back then, right? And that was 20 plus years ago. It's definitely 20 plus years ago, because I just did my 20-year class reunion. Oh, getting up there. But then, you know, Caldwell, they said, hey, we're going to make a change. We have an intervention, and we're changing it to Ida B. Wells. And we all know who Ida B. Wells was. She was a freedom fighter. She spoke up, you know, as a Black woman from Memphis. She spoke up about, like, the rights of all, right? And so naming it Ida B. Wells has some significance to it. But when you look at what's even going on right now in that school, like, it's not what Miss Wells would have wanted for her name and her legacy to be a part, because the name doesn't matter. And when I looked at those results, Sonya, it said 12% of the kids were reading on grade level, 7% of the kids were doing math. And you have to ask yourself, who is sending their kid to that school to wait for it to get better? And then I looked in that community, I said, where are people sending their kids to? Like, if it's not there, because the population is there, you got Sam Levy homes that are there, you got the River Chase, it got homes, new homes. And so I know the parents and the kids are there. But as you look, people not sending their kids there who live in the neighborhood. And so what do you do to them? Do you tell them they're wrong? Do you tell them they're making a bad decision? Or do you say, as the parent, you know best, and we got to deal with our issues before we ask you to support us?
I tell you, I think you spot on. I think I think the conversation has gotten convoluted with politics, and we talking about real lives here.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about real lives. Like, as you guys think about it as parents, like, and I would love for you guys to chime in when you think about where to send your kid, because maybe I'm off. Like, working in schools and talking to parents, I used to do home visits. And whether it was in Napier, or whether it was in Hermitage, or whether it was in Bordeaux, whether they fed me a full course dinner or could barely offer me a clean glass of water, and I'm just being transparent, sitting on those couches, I realized that each one of those parents wanted the best for their kid. They were all in different situations, but they all wanted the best. They were taking time out of the day. Some even met me, at the library or the McDonald's to have the conversation. And sometimes they would get on buses, sometimes they would get off work. And so it was in my heart, I knew, I was like, sheesh, if you meet me, taking time out your day to sit down with me, to sign an agreement, like I'm committing to you as a parent what I'm going to do. I want you to commit what you're going to do. And then for the student to understand that the school and the parent got a relationship and they have a commitment. And that's why I could never, ever shame parents, because I just sit on too many couches to listen to parents.
And when you ain't done a thing, I just wonder, can you really speak on it? Like when you ain't had your kid in some of the lower performing schools, right? What you talking about? Like I'll get in the boxing ring with any of these people around here. Why? Because this doesn't happen to me. So, I think parents have to understand what choice really means, because you've got your school bureaucrats, that I call them, school district bureaucrats, who try to frame school choice into just it's a charter school issue. And the reason why they say that is because that is the competition. And so what do people try to do when there's competition? They try to ruin the competition, especially if it's politics. They try to ruin and shame the competition, and they fight dirty.
You want me to tell you how I knew my family members?
Come on, tell me. I think I done triggered something.
Yep. When you played the game Monopoly, I used to be amazed how nasty it got. Like, we were laughing. I'm like, wait a minute. One, I see you over there stealing money. Two, I see y'all clicking up to come and get. But Monopoly showed you what happens in real life. And if you play Monopoly, like, chime in and let us know, because Monopoly brought out the worst. Like, spades brought out the worst, but it was quick. Monopoly was like, nah, this ain't no 30-minute game. Like, we about to go 2 hours and we're gonna fight to the death, right? We could laugh and joke afterwards, but right now in Nashville, people are playing Monopoly, and it ain't no laughing, it ain't no joking. They're trying to take your soul.
They're trying
to take
your whole
soul and leave you somewhere hanging out to dry. They playing Monopoly in Nashville. You see what they did to North Nashville? They bought up the property, right? And somebody else owned it. You see what they doing? They got everybody clicking up and moving to places like Southeast Nashville. Madison is getting where you can't even survive. Monopoly is happening right now in Nashville.
It is. They done bought Balton's chicken.
I know. Come on
for
now.
$1 million. They don't.
For $1 million, I ain't got $1 million. But again, I know it's worth more than $1 million to me, because I love Bolton's.
Man, that's our spot. They used to be our spot when our office was over there.
Come on now.
We go get some Bolton's hot chicken. They done bought it for $1 million. They bought the land. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about, the investment, the return on the investment. Somebody invested in that, and now they getting $1 million return. But to what cost? Like, what's the outcome? Is the outcome that we're gonna get some potato salad with raisins in a restaurant right there? Like, what? Yeah. I shouldn't have said that, but it did.
Yeah. And I ain't gonna make that choice. Yeah, I ain't making that choice, potato salad with raisins.
Like, so what's gonna be right there, right? Now after Bolton is gone, like, this real life.
Yep, maybe sushi. And Kendra, Ms. Moppin says, and Ms. Moppin was on there last night, so thank you. She says, yes, I did, but you learned from it. Yep, Monopoly taught you a lot. Ms. Henry says, good morning. Good morning to you, Ms. Henry. Yep, it's real. Like, we are going back to the Bolton's thing, and you think about the communities that we grew up in, right? And we think about our education system. Back in the day, like, you knew, I'll go back to this. I always ask Kwame and rest his soul. You know, if he would have known what he knows now, would he have fought hard to desegregate? And his words remain in my heart, in my mind. He was like, no, like we were wrong about that. And so when we think about what's happening to us, like not just in Nashville, but like people buying up and like moving our communities, like River Chase, that used to be called Lane Gardens. Like somebody just bought it, right? And in less than 18 months, those people got to find another place. I think it's like 1,200 or 800 units, and they say 200 of them are going to be affordable housing. But you know, the question always is, what is affordable? And then what does that mean for Ida B. Wells? Like, will they ever have a chance to get it together? Should they just wrap it up right now? Like, and think about what's a better school to send those kids to, because ain't nothing happening.
Nothing.
Ms. Moppin says her mother says no. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna add to that. And her mother says, "Stop me." Stop us when it comes to our kids.
Yeah, we gotta, because right now people in this city are playing musical chairs, right? Mm-hmm. And what I read this morning, it said people who are coming in are making decisions based on how the schools are to where they put their homes. And so you got to think about it. Like, are we making the same decisions that others are making? And if we don't want to make those decisions, right, we want to say, hey, we're going to stick it out. Because sometimes you got to try, right? But in the case of Caldwell, to me, like, people have been trying. But if you want to stick it out, like, where do you start with holding them accountable?
Starts right here. It starts with parents building a movement. It starts with parents looking at the big picture. You know, are we to fight about school lunch, or are we gonna fight about our kids being able to read? So maybe they can create their own school lunch. Yep. Like, you know, I think we're in a very critical time. Like, this is like do or die time for us. And I'm not saying that to be scary. I'm saying that to be truthful.
Yeah. It ain't nothing but the truth. I mean, Nicole says in a minute, there is not going to be any more Black communities. We're going to have to re-gentrify and literally take our neighborhoods back. And so I'm a totally agree with you, Nicole. But one thing that I'm also bring it back to, in a minute, there's not going to be any Black schools that are thriving. And we're going to have to redo our schools and literally take our schools back, because right now, you know, we sending the schools the best we got, and they sending us back. You know, when academic goes backwards, like let's say reading was at 19% and then it goes to 10%, it went backwards. Like, we're trusting that at least they'll hold the line, right? But when it goes backwards, I'm like, wait a minute now. I could have done better at the house.
Yep, and unapologetically. Like, they like, yeah, we knew it was going to happen.
Yep. Oh, but Miss Moppin, she hits it, right? She says, you have to pick your battles in the middle of multiple wars. And that's the strategy of the enemy. Hit you in the front, hit you in the back, hit you in the side, and then you say, sheesh, where am I going to fight? Who am I taking a swing at next?
Mm-hmm. And so we got to be generals.
Mm-hmm.
Generals are strategic. Generals forecast future things by having strategies to map out. That's what we do here. That's what we have to do as parents. It's something a skill that we have to learn. We have to learn what battles to fight. Mask ain't our battle.
Mm-hmm.
That was gonna happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that ain't no battle to fight. You know what I'm saying? Like that wasn't our fight. Our fight is, can your kids read?
Come on now. You know
Yeah,
They
the
was talking
masses
about penalizing the librarian, right? And people were up in arms.
Let's get into that.
Yeah, like so it was a country music star. I saw him on the Trump show when he used to tell people they fired. And you know, now he understands what it's like for somebody to tell you that. Like that's the empathy of it. Like he got a chance to tell people, and then you know the people told him. But one of the guys that was on the show, you know, lives in Nashville. He owns bars, and he came and said, "Yeah, like we need to be locking up librarians who are giving out the filth." And then Sonya, you said something. You was like, as a librarian, they don't got the real power, right? They giving out what they're gave by leadership. But then I was like, hold on. Let me take a step back. While we talking about divisive material, that means it's like higher level reading, right? So I'm like, okay, like let me start at the beginning, right? Because like right now, the way the numbers look, we won't have too many kids even making it to that level, like right, making it up the mountain to get to divisive topics because they still stuck on Dr. Seuss. And that's to me, that's criminal. Right.
Man, let me tell you something. You know how you know people are trying to avoid doing the right thing is when they start doing bullshit like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like
being attacked on multiple fronts, like Ms. Moffitt said, it's a smokescreen.
Man, them librarians ain't pushing no pornography.
Come on now.
They not trying to put you know who the real fight is with? I'm gonna tell y'all. It's with the people that publish the books.
Come on now.
See, when you weak, you pick on a little person. I mean, it's the story David and Goliath and some of the other stories that we known about, right, for many years, right? Like you picking on the wrong people. The people that publish the books, that's where the censorships will start.
Oh.
So, yeah.
At the state, it's a committee that tells you what books you can allow. So we need to lock them up. We need to go to that commission and say, hey, we're going to lock you up.
Well, it's not that. It's like we've got, who is that does the censorship like over the Super Bowl and all those things that come on TV? What are they called?
Yep. The FCA, the Federal Communication something. Yeah, when Janet Jackson had her mishap, they were the ones who brought the fine.
They should be regulating what books get in schools. Because they have the ability to regulate the publishing company, and the people who write the books should identify what the content or the level of maturity in the book. The damn librarian can't figure that out.
Come on now.
Because they don't read every book that comes in there. So right now what you're saying is every book that is written, published by somebody who knows everything that's in that book, whether it's talking about vaginas and breasts, yeah, I'm gonna say it.
Yep.
Because folk need to know vaginas and breasts.
Yes. Not pee-pee or
cuckoo and all that. So let me give you the right terms. I'm a nurse too. I hate that. But what we should be doing is you got people that write the book, like John Little, you don't wrote a whole book, right? And you got stuff in Color Purple. I want to read Color Purple because they were talking about how good the Color Purple was in the book versus the movie.
Come on now.
So somebody done wrote that book. They don't put all the cuss words in there. They don't put everything in there. What they done did, silly and Mister and all them, right? They don't put all in that book. Somebody had to publish that book.
Come on now.
That's where the penalty ought to go because they should alert people what the content rated like movies. I hope the media is listening to me. Parents are smart. We smart than y'all think we are. Like, rate the book. That way, the librarian, when it comes in there, okay, this is this book, right? And so it needs to go on this shelf where kids can't access it. You don't put the librarian in jail for something they don't know. What kind of bullshit is that?
Yep. And I think that's a good point, Sonny, because on the movie titles, when I see G, I was like, okay, everybody can come to this one. When I see PG-13, hey, my 11-year-old can't go. When I see rated R, I was like, yeah, like that's just mom and dad, and it's simple.
It's crazy.
Sometimes we got to get to the simplicity, but Ms.
Sometimes we got to be smart. So them state representatives that's up there, y'all ain't doing shit. You just up there. You're not researching. You're not thinking like a decision maker. And folk that's lobbying for this stuff. Like, what is their real intentions here? Like, what are you really trying to do?
I think Ms. Moffat said it. She said, well, she talked about picking your battles in the middle of multiple wars. And I think some people are strategists up there and they're like, we just need a bunch of wars. And they may not make any sense, but it's the smoke screen. And so even as we looked at it, it says age appropriate. I mean, we talked about it. It's already heading to the governor's desk. Like, as much as we talked about it, it's there. It's probably been signed. And so it says Tennessee's legislature is sending a school library bill to Governor Bill Lee's desk aimed at scrutinizing library materials for age appropriateness. Along partisan lines, the GOP-controlled House of Representatives voted 73-21 to approve the governor's proposal following the Senate's quick passage of the measure last month.
There's some politics behind this.
Mm-hmm. A separate school.
That is straight politics.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Lee, I'm calling you out. You got to get your shit together. End of quote.
Yeah. Right now, we're coming out of a pandemic, and although they talk about it, he is putting the resources out there. Although we're still trying to figure out, like, what's the state share and what's the local share. Like right now, we ain't got time to talk about penalizing librarians, criminalizing librarians. Like, we got to talk about, if they talk about student-based funding formula, like, how do we stay on message with that to make sure our kids are being in a good place where it actually matters?
It's crazy.
That's what we're dealing with. I'm stuck on the fact that books are such a concern, but our kids can't read them anyway. Ditto. Is teaching small children gay, B, C's, age appropriate, and the transgender subjects age appropriate. But I think what we're saying, Nicole, is we can't even read. And so you can't teach something that a kid can't read. And then I just think, when we think about in our community, like, those are things where policy-wise, you can go to the school board, you can go to the state, and you can figure those things out. But out of 1,000 books being read, maybe it's one. And so you deal with that. But I think they're leading a whole campaign to lock people up on small things that really don't have an effect on what we're doing here in Nashville with our kids, with our students.
It doesn't eliminate the problem.
Yeah.
When you're addressing something, what eliminates the problem is what I'm saying. The person writing the book, the publishing company that writes the description of the book, notifying people of the description on the book. When you turn to the back of a book, look. The back of the book always gives you a synopsis of the book, or in the beginning of the book, right? What if we had some here that said rated mature, like movies? Rated PG, G-rated. Otherwise, whatever you put in the book, so if you put in there about homosexuality or anything about pornography, I will never know it as a librarian because I don't read every book.
Yeah.
Root cause analysis says address it at the root cause, because what you're doing is the book's still gonna get to the kid. Somebody's gonna be penalized that didn't even know. but you saying you don't want the book to get to the kid, then stop the problem that gets the book to the kid. Like, bust down all the barriers.
Yeah.
Because you essentially have not even addressed the real issue of the book getting to the kid. Because the librarian, what they gonna do, sit in there and read all them damn books?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, they read a lot of books. That's why they're librarians. They love to read, but you can't read every single book. I mean, even audio. You can't listen to.
You don't even know what's in most books. You don't even know the content of the book until you read it.
Yeah.
So then how you going to tell it? So librarian at Library East reads a book, finds content. How are we going to notify all the librarians in the state of Tennessee? You've got to address it at the root. That's called system. We talked about this last night. That is changing it system-wise.
You know what a recall is, right? So if I'm driving and my brakes go out and I hit somebody, and then a lot of people are doing, they realize it wasn't John who made the mistake. It was faulty brakes that came from the supplier or the people who developed the car. It's like, nope, we're doing a national recall. We pulling all of them, because at the end of the day, like, I have no control over whether the brakes do well if the brakes started off in a bad place. And when you think about librarians, they're not bringing the books in. Like, that's the only thing we're saying. I agree. Like, I don't want my child to be taught things that I don't think are appropriate. I'm just saying we got to go to the right source, and the right source is not those librarians.
If I got a problem with a taco, Fahrenheit 51, I hate that book, stupid book. Thank you.
What was that about again?
I don't even know.
Okay.
I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
That book tortured me in high school. I still don't know what it's about. So that's just like going to Taco Bell, getting a taco, and then going over to Burger King and complaining about it. What they gonna do?
You gotta take it to the source.
You got the people who make the decision. Yeah. The content in the book is the author and the publishing company. Censor them. Have them to identify the content in the book that is harmful. Otherwise, what we finna have, a book burning?
Burning the books. There you go. Ms. Moffin was right after you.
Burning the books. Burning books are not meant to see Ms. Moffin say how we think about it.
Yep. Y'all were, as soon as you were saying it, she was putting the comment. But as we wrap this up, like, these are things that we gotta keep in the front of our mind to make sure. I just keep going back to the comment, like fighting multiple wars. We got to realize that some people are putting out multiple wars. And so you never have time to really focus. And what we want to focus on, and what we have always did, is to say, but where are our kids academically? Can they read on grade level? Are they doing math on grade level? And then from there, that's the foundation. And if we get the foundation right, but right now we got work to do around just the foundation, around the delivery, and not thinking about, middle school, high school. At that point, we can have that conversation, but we got to start with first.
This is nonsense and absolute oxymoron. What they're trying to do, they're trying to take away all rights of freedom of information, just like taking African-American history being taken out. So African-American history is not being taken out. American history is being diluted and lied about. Remember that. Slavery or systemic racism is not about Black American history or African American history. That's not our history. Our history is the great things. The American history is what they did to us, and the dirty stain on America. And what they want to do is dilute that, and they want to say, no, that this didn't happen and we didn't do this. I want to make sure, as we're messaging with people, when we're talking about anti-CRT and all those things, that we clearly can talk to people about this stuff as they're wording it. They use their words different, and we got to know the code. And there's a code in there.
Yeah. And Nicole will be putting out that statement again, as we thought about Hillsdale. Like, one of the things with Hillsdale College, when they think about those charter schools they're trying to bring, that it was diluting the American history around civil rights, and essentially said the civil rights movement was government overreach. And so, yeah, like that's what we're not about to do. We're not about to dilute people who were beat, dragged, and ultimately killed, to make sure that we have these same freedoms. And because they did all that, I'm gonna talk about it every day. You ain't, yeah, like that's one thing we just not gonna do is stop us from teaching our kids, but also keeping it in our schools, because that American history is really important, not just for me, but for my kids to know how everything went down, so they can make sure if they see it again, if they see a thing and know a thing, they can stop a thing. And so we'll end with Ms. Mom. She says, how you going to know why for your fight or to fight if you don't know the struggle you came from? And there you go. We know the struggle back in the day was segregation. The struggle back in the day was slavery. The struggle back in the day was being treated as second class and third class citizens. Our struggle right now, because we know education is the key to freedom in America, is that they are not teaching our kids how to read, and they're not teaching our kids to be ready when they graduate to be college, career, and community ready. And we bring in the fight home because we know what'll happen if we continue to let them win day in and day out. I thank you guys for jumping on here with us. You know, last week we had it, but we didn't. Like, these conversations are important. I thank the parents who jumped on our campaign call last night. I look forward to seeing all you guys on our speaker series as we talk about mental health. You know, as strong as we want to be as parents, we all know we have our weak points where mental health is just, it's hard to overcome. And so thank you guys again for jumping on this week. Look forward to seeing you next week, and you guys have a great day.